Welcome back, faith builders. We continue our journey through the first book of Adam and Eve, exploring chapters 51 to 60. These chapters are filled with profound lessons on resilience, faith, and the human spirit's strength. Let's dive in. Our story resumes in chapter 51. Adam took Eve and went to the south of it, by the river of water, where they once fasted. But on their way, Satan had heard the word of Elohim communing with Adam respecting covering. It grieved him, and he hastened to the place where the sheepskins were, to throw them into the sea, or burn them with fire, so that Adam and Eve should not find them. But as he was about to take them, the word of Elohim came from heaven, and bound him by the side, until Adam and Eve came near him. But as they neared, they were afraid of him, and his hideous look. Then Elohim said to Adam and Eve, "This is he who was hidden in the serpent, deceived you and stripped you of the garment of light and glory in which you were, promised you majesty and divinity. Where is his divinity, light, and glory that rested on him? O Adam, he wished to take the sheepskin covering from thee and destroy it. See, I bound him until you came and saw him, and beheld his weakness, that no power is left with him. And Elohim released him from his bond." Chapter 52. Adam and Eve wept before Elohim, on account of their bodies that required an earthly covering. Adam said to Eve, "This skin of beasts with which we covered, but when we have put it on, behold, a token of death shall have come upon us. Since the owners of these skins have died, so also shall we die and pass away." They took the skins and went inside the cave. They stood and prayed, and thought how they could make garments of skins, for they had no skills of it. Then Elohim sent them his angel to show them how to work it out. And so it was, by Elohim's order, they became garments for Adam and Eve, and he clothed them. Then Adam's and Eve's bodies were covered. They stood and prayed, and sought the mercy of Elohim and forgiveness, and gave him thanks, for he had mercy on them and covered their nakedness. And they prayed the whole night. When morning dawned at the rising of the sun, they said their prayers after their custom, and went out of the cave. Adam said to Eve, "Let's go to the westward of the cave, and see it today, since we know not what is there." And they went forth towards the border. In chapter 53, they went not far from the cave, when Satan came towards them, and hid himself between them and the cave, under the form of two ravenous lions. They came towards Adam and Eve to break them in pieces and devour them. They wept and prayed to Elohim to deliver them from their paws. Then the word of Elohim came to them, and drove away the lions from them. And Elohim said unto Adam, "O Adam, what seekest thou on the western border? And why hast thou left of thine own accord the eastern border, in which was thy dwelling place? Now turn back to thy cave, and remain in it, that Satan does not deceive thee, nor work his purpose upon thee. For in the western border they will go from thee a seed, that shall replenish it, and will defile themselves with their sins, and their yielding to the behests of Satan, and by following his works. Therefore I will bring upon them the waters of flood, and overwhelm them all. But I will deliver what is left of the righteous among them, and I will bring them to a distant land. And the land in which thou dwellest now shall remain desolate, and without one inhabitant in it." After Elohim had discoursed to them, they went back to the cave, but their flesh was dried up, and their strength failed from fasting and praying, and from the sorrow they felt at having trespassed against Elohim. In chapter 54, Adam and Eve stood up in the cave and prayed the whole of that night until morning. When the sun was risen, they both went out of the cave, their heads wandering from heaviness of sorrow, and they not knowing whither they went. They walked the southern border, then headed to the eastern border, beyond which there was no farther space. The cherub who guarded the garden was standing in the western gate, and guarding against Adam and Eve, lest they should suddenly come into the garden. And the cherub turned round, as if to put them to death, according to the commandment Elohim had given him. Adam and Eve came to the eastern border of the garden. thinking in their heart that the cherub was not watching as they were standing by the gate. Wishing to go suddenly came the cherub with a flashing sword of fire in his hands, and when they saw them, he went forth to kill them, for he was afraid lest Elohim should destroy him, as they went into the garden without his order. And the sword of the cherub seemed to flame afar off, but when he raised it over Adam and Eve, the flame thereof did not flash forth. Therefore did the cherub think that Elohim was favorable to them, and was bringing them back into the garden, and cherub stood wondering. He could not go up to heaven to ascertain Elohim's order regarding their getting into the garden. He stood by them, and when Adam and Eve saw the cherub coming towards them, with a flaming sword of fire in his hands, they fell on their faces from fear and were as dead. At that time the heavens and earth shook, and other cherubim came down from heaven to the cherub who guarded the garden, and saw him amazed and silent. Then again other angels came down nigh unto the place where Adam and Eve were. They were divided between joy and sorrow. They were glad, because they thought Elohim was favorable to Adam, and wished him to return to the garden, and wished to restore him to the gladness he once enjoyed. But they sorrowed over Adam, because he had fallen like dead man, he and Eve, and said in their thoughts, Adam has not died in this place, but Elohim was put to death, for his having come to this place, and wishing to get into the garden without his leave. In chapter 55, the word of Elohim came to Adam and Eve, and raised them from their dead state, saying, Why came ye up hither? Do you intend to go into the garden, from which I brought you out? It cannot be today, but only when the covenant I have made with you is fulfilled. Adam heard these words of Elohim, and the angels whom he did not see, but only heard the sound of them with his ears. He and Eve wept, and said to the angels, O spirits who wait upon Elohim, look upon me, and upon my being unable to see you. For when in my formal nature could see you, I sang praises as you do, and my heart was far above you. But now that I have transgressed, that bright nature is gone, and now miserable state, now cannot see you, and you do not serve me as before, for I am become animal flesh, pled with Elohim to restore me my nature and rescue me from this misery, and remove me from death he passed upon me, for having transgressed against him. When the angels heard these words, they all grieved over him and cursed Satan who had beguiled Adam, until he came from the garden to misery, from life to death, from peace to trouble, and from gladness to a strange land. Then the angels said to Adam, Thou didst hearken to Satan, and didst forsake the word of Elohim who created thee, and thou didst believe that Satan would fulfill all he had promised thee. But now, O Adam, we will make known to thee what came upon us through him. Before his fall from heaven, he gathered together his hosts, and deceived them, promising them to give them a great kingdom, a divine nature, and other promises he made them. His hosts believed that his word was true, so they yielded to him and renounced the glory of Elohim. He then sent for us according to the order in which we were to come under his command, and to hearken to his vain promise. But we would not, we took not his advice. Then after he had fought with Elohim, he gathered his hosts and made war with us. And if not for Elohim's strength that was with us, we could not have prevailed against him to hurl him from heaven. But when he fell from among us, there was great joy in heaven, for if he had continued in heaven, not an angel would remain in it. But Elohim in his mercy drove him from among us to the dark earth, for he had become darkness itself and a worker of unrighteousness. He has continued, O Adam, to make war against thee, until he beguiled thee and made thee come out of the garden, to this strange land, where all these trials have come to thee, and death which Elohim brought upon him he has also brought to thee, O Adam, because thou didst obey him, and didst transgress against Elohim. The angels rejoiced and praised Elohim, and asked him not to destroy Adam this time, for having sought to enter the garden, but to bear with him until the fulfillment of the promise, and to help him in this world, until he was free from Satan's hand. Chapter 56. Then the word of Elohim came to Adam and said, O Adam, look at the garden of joy, and this earth of toil. And behold the angels who are in the garden, and see thy alone on this earth, with Satan whom thou didst obey. Elohim spoke how Adam didn't obey him and lost the garden, but transgressed and hearkened to Satan. Now becomes his guest with his angels, full of wickedness, and now in the earth that bring thorns and thistles to thee. Elohim kept reminding Adam of how Satan deceived him with untrue promises and couldn't imitate Elohim's creation as he had said. But for my mercy, Elohim said, my pity for thee, I have promised thee, that at the end of the great 5 days and a half, I will come and save thee. Then Elohim said to Adam and Eve, arise, go down, lest the cherub with a sword of fire in his hand destroys you. Adam's heart was comforted by Elohim's words to him, and he worshipped before him. Elohim commanded his angels to escort Adam and Eve to the cave with joy, instead of fear that had come upon them. The angels did as Elohim commanded and brought them to the cave. They comforted and strengthened them, and then departed from them towards heaven to their Creator who sent them. After the angels had gone, Satan with shamefacedness and stood at the entrance of the cave, and called out Adam, and said, O Adam, come let me speak to thee. Then Adam came out of the cave, thinking he was one of Elohim's angels that was come to give him some good counsel. Chapter 57. When Adam came out and saw his hideous figure, he was afraid of him, and said unto him, Who art thou? Then Satan answered and said, It is I, who hid myself within the serpent, and who talked to Eve, and beguiled her until she hearkened to my command. I am he who sent her, through the wiles of my speech, to deceive thee, and ye came away from under the command of Elohim. But when Adam heard this from him, he asked him about all the promises he made to them. Then Satan said, I can't fulfill the promises I made to you, for I have never even thought of obtaining what I asked. Therefore I made you fall, just as I fell, and whosoever accepts my counsel falls thereby. But now, O Adam, by the reason of this fall, you are now under my rule, and I am king over thee, because thou hast hearkened to me and transgressed against thy Elohim. There will be no deliverance from my hands until the day promised thee by thy Elohim. Satan said, Inasmuch we do not know the day, or are agreed by Elohim for thy deliverance, for that reason will we multiply war and murder upon thee, and thy seeds after thee. This is our will and good pleasure, that we may not leave one of the sons of men to inherit our orders in heaven. For as to our abode, O Adam, it is in burning fire, and we will not cease our evil doing, no, not 1 day nor 1 hour. And I, O Adam, shall sow fire upon thee, when thou comest into the cave to dwell there. Adam heard these words, he wept and mourned, and said to Eve, Hear what he said. He will not fulfill what he told us in the garden. Did he really become king over us? But we will ask Elohim, who created us, to deliver us out of his hands. Chapter 58. Then Adam and Eve spread their hands unto Elohim, praying and entreating him to drive Satan away from them, that he do them no violence, and do not force them to deny Elohim. Then Elohim sent to them at once his angels, who drove away Satan from them. Then Adam and Eve went into the cave, and stood up and turned their faces to the earth, to pray to Elohim. As they prayed, Adam said unto Eve, Thou hast seen what temptations have befallen us in this land. Come, let us arise, and ask Elohim to forgive us the sins we have committed, and we will not come out until the end of the day next to the 40th. And if we die herein, he will save us. Then they arose and joined together in entreating Elohim. They abode thus praying in the cave, neither did they come out of it, by night or by day, until their prayers went up out of their mouths, like a flame of fire. Chapter 59. Satan did not allow them to end their prayers, for he called all his hosts, and they came, and said to them, Since Adam and Eve, whom we deceived, have agreed together to pray to Elohim night and day, and will not come out of the cave for the 40th day, and continue praying that he will deliver them out of our hands, and restore them to their former state. See what we shall do unto them. And his host said unto him, Power is thine, O our Lord, to do what thou listest. Then Satan took his hosts, and came inside the cave on the 30th night of the 40 days and 1. And he smote Adam and Eve, until he left them dead. Then the word of Elohim came unto Adam and Eve, who raised them from their suffering. And Elohim said to Adam, Be strong, and be not afraid of him who is just come to thee. But Adam wept and said, Where was thou, O my Elohim, that they should smite me with such blows, and that this suffering should come upon us? Then Elohim said to Adam, See, he is Lord and Master of all thou hast, he who said he would give thee divinity, and reminded Adam of all Satan promised and couldn't do. Then Adam wept before Elohim, pleading for him to take his soul out of his body. But Elohim had patience with Adam, and even let them remain in the cave until they had fulfilled the 40 days. But their strength and flesh withered from fasting and praying, from hunger and thirst, for they had not tasted either food or drink since they left the garden. Yet they continued to pray in hunger until the end of the 40th. They were fallen in the cave, yet what speech escaped from their mouths was only in praises. Chapter 60. Then Satan came to the cave, clad in a garment of light. In his hands was a staff of light. And he looked most awful, but his face was pleasant and his speech was sweet. He transformed himself in order to deceive Adam, and even to make them come out of the cave, since they had fulfilled the 40 days. He drew near the cave and said, O Adam, rise ye, stand up, and Eve, and come along with me to a good land. And fear not, I am flesh and bone like you. And at first I was a creature that Elohim created. And it was so, that when he had created me, he placed me in a garden in the north, on the border of the world. And he said, Abide here. And I abode there according to his word, neither did I transgress his commandment. Then he made a slumber to come over me. And he brought thee, O Adam, out of my side, but did not make thee abide by me. But Elohim took thee in his divine hand, and placed thee in a garden to the eastward. Then I grieved because of thee, for that while Elohim had taken thee out of my side, he had not let thee abide with me. Satan kept lying and saying all manner of words just to deceive Adam. Satan said, I didn't know about the trials that have come before thee. But Elohim told me how he drove you and Eve out of the garden for transgressing against him and hearkened to Satan. Then Elohim said to me, Arise, go and make them come to thy place, and suffer not Satan come near them and afflict them. He further said, When thou hast taken them to thyself, give them the fruit of the tree of life to eat, and give them drink from the water of peace, and cloth them in a garment of light, and restore them to their former grace. Satan kept lying with his sweet words, and how Elohim has sent him to redeem him back into the garden. Satan said, And now, O my children, Adam and Eve, look at my heart and my feeble estate, and at my coming from that distant place. Come with me to a place of rest. Then he began to sob before them, and tears poured upon the earth. When Adam and Eve raised their eyes and saw his bearded, and heard his sweet talk, their hearts softened towards him. They hearkened unto him, for they believed he was true. And it seemed to them that they were his offspring, when they saw that his face was like their own, and they trusted him. The journey of Adam and Eve in this episode tells of how Elohim's mercies endure forever. Despite the wrong, Elohim is always willing to forgive, protect, and save his children, though even when fear grips and confusion sets in. Knowing that Elohim is there with you and always listening to your prayers of repentance and thanksgiving, I pray we believe in Elohim through his son Yeshua and understand that the Creator will never neglect his people. Remember, no matter the challenges we face, Satan's tricks and agendas are still the same. nothing new. And Elohim is the same, yesterday, today, and forever. Elohim holds his word dearly and keeps to what he has said. May the grace of Elohim continue to rest on you all. Amen. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, share, and hit that bell icon so as not to miss the next episode. See you next time.